Today on Mormon Times, there's a time for healing.
The Lord can consecrate our afflictions for our gain.
Finding peace after a loved one takes their own life. Expert advice on dealing with this kind of loss. And the ultimate I'm a Mormon piece featuring two LDS boys over a decade of their lives. This new documentary is an inspiring look at growing up in the church. And marking 2 years since the Haiti earthquake.
It was exactly like you see in the photos. It was that bad.
How one member's humanitarian experience there changed her forever, and what she's doing to still offer aid. In these days of presidential campaigning, when many evangelicals claim that Mormons are not Christian, it's refreshing to see a new film that accurately captures LDS culture and beliefs. And the filmmaker is a Protestant. Two Brothers is a documentary about growing up and discovering your own testimony. It follows two LDS Seattle boys from their adolescence into young adulthood and all the raw emotion that goes with it. In Two Brothers, we meet Sam and Luke Nelson, starting at ages 10 and 8.
What makes you angry?
When my brother calls me names. My little brothers.
So what do you think about your older brother, Sam?
I don't like him.
What does he do to you?
Tease me.
Which brother?
Sam.
Sam, you're the oldest. Did you beat him up a lot?
Not very much, but
This is a story about family and faith and the brotherhood that develops between these boys. They're normal kids, certainly not perfect, and they don't have to be. In fact, their weaknesses help us relate.
What's the most difficult thing about your relationship with Sam?
he solves things by hurting me.
Ideally, how would you like to relate to Sam?
Better.
They also have strengths, and those are inspiring. In high school, Sam runs for student body president.
They had the primaries, and I was still down.
Then Luke steps in to help as a dancing bee.
Luke really helped. He was like key. I won 60-40.
But growing up can be tough.
Sam's told me what he went through his entire adolescence up till the middle of last year. Did you know that he felt depressed almost every day?
No, I didn't. Never would I guess.
The brothers experience both trials and triumphs.
You know, with my depression, I feel like that was probably at the point in my life when I changed, that was my greatest weakness of anything. And to, in one day, change that to my greatest strength and keep that my greatest strength for 2 years now, it gives me a lot of confidence.
I kind of look out to him. He's kind of like my role model, kind of.
We see the boys change and grow, not only physically, but spiritually, as Sam prepares for a mission and receives his call.
So I read it, and it's like, Dear Elder Nelson,
you are hereby called to labor in the Chile Conception Mission.
Yeah.
Their lives in the documentary continue as Elder Sam Nelson goes to preach the gospel, chronicling his mission in video diaries.
I'm going through the biggest emotional roller coaster, just this emotional boot camp.
Meantime, Luke switches things up and attends a Catholic high school his senior year, which presents more challenges and successes.
Really speaks volumes for these younger kids growing up saying, well, this guy doesn't chew tobacco, he doesn't, drink alcohol.
We see Luke trying out as a walk-on for the BYU football team, and he receives a mission call of his own.
You're assigned to labor in the Cambodia Film Fin Mission.
Cambodia! Oh my gosh, and everyone gets so excited, and I'm just kind of sitting there, and I was like, I don't even know where Cambodia is.
Their journey is really all about how the boys are guided and sustained by faith in Christ and love of family, and emerge stronger at the end.
All right. See you in 2. All right. Better write me.
Okay.
This was such a good movie. It was a project that spanned over 5,000 days and involved a number of people. And filmmaker Rick Stevenson joins me now to talk about the project. So glad to have you here. It was a great movie. Now, Two Brothers was only a part of this project. 5,000 days encompassed many other things. What else?
Well, we have 200 kids over 6 countries now. This started as a sort of small documentary project where we would interview a child once a year between the ages of 8 and 18. And it kind of has blown up into this fairly big thing.
I can see them grow up. So what were you hoping to communicate with this movie, with the Two Brothers?
With Two Brothers? Mm-hmm. I just wanted a candid portrayal of who they were. The project's really about letting kids speak for themselves, and so hopefully I did that. I'm a born-again Christian.
Right.
And married into a Mormon family. And so we've been all about finding the things that we have in common.
And these boys are your nephews?
And these boys are my Mormon nephews. And so I spent every Saturday with them over a series of years.
And what was it like following them for so long?
Oh, well, first of all, they're just great. I mean, I feel that about all my relatives and all my kids.
Yeah.
But so it was a painless duty. But it really allowed me to understand them and that part of my family so much better. So it was a personal journey for me as well.
Right. And what are the challenges of watching boys this age grow up? You know, you saw it all.
I think it's mostly telling them that it's okay to say what you feel, that it's okay to be honest, and
you don't have to mask your emotions.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that for men. There's a lot of that for religious people, wanting to appear perfect when we aren't. Only Jesus is perfect, you know. And this was really a chance to say, listen, in this world, all sorts of things happen to us, good and bad. And when the bad things come in, they've got to get out, or else there's going to be some consequences. And the project's a lot about letting them express both sides of that.
And as a Protestant, did you get a pretty good insight into Mormon culture and beliefs by doing this?
I did. I discovered all sorts of new things.
And a lot of commonalities?
Mostly commonalities, absolutely. Yeah, but for instance, I never really understood what the mission was. I just assumed it was about spreading the word, but really, at least 50% of it is a rite of passage. It's about boys becoming men and girls becoming women. And I really admire that about the church, because every society in history has had this, has had rites of passage, but we've given that up in the last 100 years. And I mean, the general world, just kind of giving our children to the world to be educated, and that's not the way to do it.
Well, this was such a good film. We were hoping that people get out and see it. Thanks for being here. We do have a few copies of this movie to give away. So if you're interested in getting one, just go to our Mormon Times TV Facebook page and enter to win one of these videos at the Mormon Times contest button. Missionary letters are often insightful and inspiring, and so each week we try and share some of these letters and pictures of missionaries serving in the field with you. So here's a portion of a letter that Elder Adam Wright sent to his grandmother, and he is serving in Brazil.
It's amazing how my mind is opened up to the Scriptures. I feel like I'm reading a different book than I used to read. I love the Book of Mormon. I feel happiness, enlightenment, and peace every time I read. I just can't get enough of it.
If you have a letter and picture of a missionary you'd like to share, send it to mormontimes@ksl.com. Coming up next, healing after a loved one's suicide.
This terrible thing that's happened in my life can be a blessing to other people.
A very personal account of how this was possible and the lessons that were learned along the way.
My mom's best friend, my friend's brother, my best friend, my basketball buddy, one of my young men, my friend's mother, my neighbor's wife, my sister's friend, my sister. My name is Joshua Oman. I know 10 people who've committed suicide. They were within 3 streets of each other. It's pretty overwhelming. Closest one to me is my sister. She was 19 years old, and 6 years ago, she committed suicide. She had a tough life. She was sexually abused as a young child that damaged her self-esteem. And when she got to the point where she was starting to make choices, she chose things that could try to mask and hide her pain, and that led to alcohol addiction. She had incredible feelings of guilt. She constantly felt like she was letting our family down. And she began attempting suicide. That day she died was obviously the worst possible day of my life. The things that helped were the idea that Christ understands, that He knows what Malia was thinking, and that He's the judge. The biggest lesson I learned from my sister passing began about a year and a half before she died. And I sat across from her one time in a family session at rehab. Said, I'm not going to have kids and allow them to be with their drunk aunt. And in my mind, I was trying to motivate her, but I was thinking the one thing that she hated most about herself, her addiction. And I turned that against her. And I told her that not only did I not accept her, but that I didn't love her. We talk about unconditional love. And truly unconditionally loving her would have been saying, come along, come as you are, and we'll love you. Malia's death has become sacred to us. In 2 Nephi chapter 2, Lehi points out to Jacob, he says that our afflictions will be consecrated for our gain. And that means to make them holy. The Lord has taught us many, many lessons, one of which is to be more loving, be more aware of people who are hurting, and be more loving and kind to them. I believe that my sister is still around, that she can see and observe what I do, and hopefully she sees that the lesson I take away, that I am more loving with my own kids and more accepting. Hopefully she can see that I am a better brother to my two remaining brothers. And if those are tributes to her, and those are things that I can dedicate to my lesson, learn from her, then I think she'll be happy.
Thank you, Joshua, for sharing such a personal story and your takeaway to love more and judge less. LDS psychologist Wendy Ulrich tells us how we can do all that, and she shares some insight on how to effectively deal with loss. It's coming up next. Loss. We all experience it, and some of these experiences can be devastating. So how do you deal with loss and still live a full life? LDS psychologist Wendy Ulrich is joining us today. And Wendy, before the break, we saw Joshua's story about his sister's suicide. And the biggest question about loss is why, and how do we stop beating ourselves up when we ask ourselves that question?
Such a great point. You know, I've never forgotten an experience in my own life. A roommate of mine who married late in life, pregnant with her first child when her husband passed away from cancer. And I remember the phone call where I was saying to her, Linda, don't you just ask yourself, why is this happening to me? And she said, you know, Wendy, I don't ask myself that question. I was kind of taken back by that, but she said, why not me? You know, I didn't come to life to learn only from other people's trials and tribulations and afflictions and difficulties. I came to learn by my own experience. I really appreciated her perspective, and reminds me that Christ never is called the preventer. Of all the names that we give him in Scripture, that's not one of them. He doesn't offer to prevent difficulties in our lives, and we aren't going to prevent all the difficulties in the lives of people that we love either.
But they'll help save us in the eternities, right?
Yes, absolutely. And out of those experiences, we can acquire such wonderful gifts of compassion and empathy, of non-judgmentalness, and of a greater understanding for the impact that we can have in people's lives when we truly love them.
And the victims of suicide often deal with pretty raw emotions, you know, grief and anger and guilt. And how do you help somebody get through that when they're feeling that?
Well, I don't know that you do. You know, it's such a hard thing, because those are the emotions that we feel. It's really interesting, because when people are contemplating suicide, often what they think is, well, you know, my family will be better off without me, or nobody will really know that I'm gone. And nothing could be further from the truth. There's nothing you can do that's more devastating to the people that you love. It's such a difficult thing that we're left holding. Sometimes we're trying to figure out how do we forgive this person who sort of violated the trust that we have between us, that says we're both allowed to make mistakes, we're all allowed to be imperfect, and we keep trying, we keep coming back, and suddenly this person isn't trying and they aren't coming back, and we're left holding the bag. And I think sometimes it helps to remember we don't have to go to that person to pay back what we've lost. They can't pay it back, but there is someone who can. When we take that debt to Jesus Christ, he says, this person's debt is between me and them at this point. You know, I will work it out with them what they owe, because I only understand everything that they were dealing with, everything they were thinking, their history, everything about them. But I can pay you back what was taken. I can restore the trust, the peace, the feeling of safety, and I can add all these wonderful lessons that you'll learn.
And they can find happiness again.
Absolutely.
Okay. How do we help people? How do, you know, what do you say and what don't you say when someone's lost someone like that to
Such
suicide?
a good question, because we have a tendency to sort of say, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So we just
Don't
stay
say
away.
anything.
We don't say anything, which doesn't help. On the other hand, we can try to offer all these sort of easy fix answers that we really don't know the answer to. I think what we do is we follow the advice in Mosiah 18. We comfort, we listen, we mourn with them when they mourn. We try to bear their burdens that they may be light. We just listen. And above all, you know, in all of those things, we can bear our testimony. There is a resurrection. There is healing and growth beyond the grave. There is an opportunity for people to change and improve. But right now, we promise we are not going to forget this person who's gone. We're going to remember their wonderful good qualities, and not just this tragic end, but everything about their life that was positive and helpful.
Thank you so much for all that. That really helps a lot. Appreciate that in dealing with loss. And we will post Wendy's answers on our website. And so you can go to that, mormontimestv.ksl.com. And if you want to ask Wendy any questions on this subject, she will be answering them on the Mormon Times TV Facebook page. And we're really glad that you will do that for us. Thanks so much, Wendy. A comfort can also come from words of the prophets. In the article Suicide, Some Things We Know and Some We Do Not, Elder M. Russell Ballard teaches that suicide is a sin, a very grievous sin, but only the Lord knows all the facts and the degree of the person's accountability at the time of the act. The Lord will administer fair judgment. Elder Ballard says this does not give us a reason to excuse ourselves in committing sins. We must constantly strive to do our best in following the example of the Savior in every aspect of our lives. He reminds us that spiritual growth comes line upon line, and as Mary Rogers experienced, that gradual learning happens not only in this life, but also in the next.
It's been 15 years. He had dealt with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and that kind of built up in his later years, and then he developed depression. I remember him saying, I wish I had cancer, I wish I had this, because you know, people would know. I wouldn't feel like I have to hide it. I had a daughter that was dealing with depression also, and I got her help. I felt like she was doing very well. And then he seemed to get worse, and so my focus was him. And then in the middle of that, she takes a bunch of pills. It was about 3 or 4 months later, and he commits suicide. You feel like your world is tumbling down. When you have hope and you think you're making progress. My daughter had an experience. She had a dream, and I love him in heaven. And she finds him in a classroom, and he is happy, and he's all in white. And everyone in the room, she feels has committed suicide. And she said, they were learning. And I just thought, you know what? We still learn in the next life. Do I really believe in eternal families? Do I believe in the atonement of Jesus Christ? And I do, and I did. There's no doubt in my mind that Christ lives and that he has made that ultimate sacrifice for us all. And because of him, I can be happy.
And thanks to Mary for sharing her sacred experiences with us. To rewatch or to share any of today's stories, go to mormontimestv.ksl.com, and we will also link to Elder Ballard's article on suicide and post some information on suicide prevention. We'll be right back with more on Mormon Times. A Utah woman's thoughts turn to Haiti this month as we mark the 2-year anniversary of the horrific earthquake that reduced the Caribbean country to rubble and took some 300,000 lives. Days after the quake, LDS member Tony Sorensen flew in with one of the first humanitarian teams to respond, and what she saw and experienced changed her forever. Here's her story.
The largest, most powerful earthquake in the region's history has crippled the country, measuring 7.
The phone just rang, literally rang, and it was this man, and he said, someone gave me your name and number, and would you come help us? And I was just so honored to do that. It was exactly like you see in the photos. It was that bad. You couldn't not see destruction. There was no place you could turn where you did not see concrete, broken concrete. I went personally from tent to tent, helping however you can with the team of people, but we had surgeons who went and actually did great good. And the people were so helpful to one another and so grateful for the help that came to them. They were loving each other, the mothers were braiding the children's hair. One little boy that just broke my heart. His school had been completely destroyed, but he got up every morning, he put his little backpack and his uniform on, and he just walked around, and I saw him almost every morning. In this mass of destruction, these people were so resilient.
Tony also found out how resilient she was. A bus tire blowout resulted in a broken ankle and leg for her.
And we had duct tape and a boot, and that's what we used. When people saw me, they kind of like, what happened to you? And then they would have their arm in a sling or their head bandaged, or they would have a broken leg, and then we would have this automatic commonality. Yeah, to, you know, okay, you tell me your story, I'll tell you mine. These people are still living without homes, without water, without the basic necessities that we take for granted.
In April, Tony and a group will return to Haiti to refurbish an orphanage.
And you know that you're going to help, 300 little children, and you're going to make sure that they have an opportunity. They have clothing, they have food, they have shelter, they have the necessities that they need. Then we've made a difference there. I came away understanding that we are all God's children, that He loves each one of His children. He's aware of those little children. When we go out to try to help someone else, we're representing our Creator. We're representing the God that loves us.
Several groups continue to send aid to Haiti, including the LDS Church, helping with housing, education, employment, a measles campaign, and a clean water project there. Well, thanks for joining us today on Mormon Times. We hope that you have a wonderful day.